The starship Valiant moved through empty space with its engines barely working, and Lisa Morgan stood alone watching the distant stars fade. One by one, because humanity was losing the war against the Krill Empire, and everyone knew it, but nobody wanted to say it out loud. 15 years of fighting had worn them down, and system after system fell to the insect creatures that swept across space like hungry wolves, and Lisa had seen so many good people die that she stopped counting after the first 1,003 days ago. Something changed when her ship picked up a strange signal from a moon that was not on any map, and Lisa took a shuttle down alone because her crew was busy with repairs, and what she found there made her question everything. She thought she knew about the universe deep inside a crystal cave that glowed with soft blue light. She discovered a woman with silver hair and golden eyes, standing next to a dragon whose scales changed colors like oil on water, and the woman spoke in words that filled Lisa's mind, even though she had never heard that language before. The woman called herself Meridian, and she told Lisa that she had been sleeping for 10,000 years, waiting for the moment when the galaxy needed her most. And the dragon named Ashenwing had guarded her through all those centuries. Patient and eternal Meridian explained that humanity fought with honor, but the Krill fought only with hunger, and they would consume everything unless someone stopped them. Because she had seen this happen before in galaxies that were now nothing but dust and darkness, Lisa brought them both onto her ship in 2 days. Later, the Krill attacked with 12 warships against her one damaged vessel, but Meridian and Ashenwing fought back with fire and lightning that turned the enemy fleet into burning wreckage floating in the void now. Lisa's crew was gone because the Krill had boarded the ship during the battle and killed everyone except her, but Meridian had saved Lisa by turning the attackers into ash with her bare hands. Standing in the cargo bay, Lisa watched Meridian standing beside Ashenwing and understood that humanity did not need to win this war alone because they had found allies from a time before. Time itself, Lisa set course for Earth and told Meridian they would show the military leaders what they had found, and then together they would end this war once and for all. Meridian smiled, and it was both beautiful and terrifying at the same time, and she whispered that the galaxy fell silent when humans walked into the stars, and now it was time to remind everyone why that mattered. The Valiant jumped to hyperspace, leaving behind the wreckage of the Krill fleet and carrying with it the hope that humanity might actually survive. Earth's defense weapons almost fired on the Valiant when it appeared from hyperspace, but Lisa sent her emergency codes just in time, and Admiral Kate Bradley met them at the docking bay with 50 armed soldiers, who all stopped and stared. When Meridian walked down the ramp, Ashenwing followed behind her with his massive body coiled and ready to strike, and his eyes glowed with intelligence that was older than human. Civilization itself. Kate could barely speak when she saw the dragon because nothing in her training prepared her for a creature that was 30 feet long with wings that seemed to exist in multiple places at once. Lisa introduced Meridian and Ashenwing and explained they were going to help humanity win the war. But Kate needed proof, so they went to the briefing room where all the top military leaders waited. Meridian told them about the first wars that happened millions of years ago when Earth was still cooling, and she spoke of the devourers who consumed entire civilizations, leaving nothing behind but empty void. The Krill were descendants of those ancient parasites, and they had evolved over countless generations, but their hunger never changed, and they would keep eating until nothing remained. Meridian explained that weapons alone could not defeat the Krill because they adapted too quickly and learned from every battle. But they had one weakness that never changed since the beginning. She showed them a holographic image of a massive structure at the center of the galaxy that pulsed with sick green light, and it was called the hive mind, where every Krill consciousness connected together. Like a giant brain, every thought and instinct of every Krill flowed from that single point, and if they destroyed it, then all the Krill everywhere would die at once. General Paul Henderson, who had fought the Krill for 12 years, said they already knew about the hive mind, but it was protected by thousands of warships, and 3 strike forces had tried to reach it, and none came back. Meridian said they failed because they fought like soldiers when they should have fought like hunters, moving through shadows and striking from darkness. She told them she knew paths through space that human ships could not follow, and Ashenwing could hide their vessels with ancient magic, making them invisible to Krill sensors, so together they could reach the hive mind and destroy it. Kate asked if this was a suicide mission, but Meridian corrected her and said it was victory because humanity had fought with courage, and now they needed to fight with wisdom after hours of debate. They agreed, and Kate put together a strike force of 20 ships crewed by volunteers who knew they might never see home again. Lisa would command the mission with Meridian and Ashenwing as guides, and they would leave in 3 days. When the meeting ended, Kate pulled Lisa aside and asked if she trusted the elf woman. Lisa thought about Meridian standing over her when Krill warriors boarded the Valiant, and how lightning crackled from her hands as she burned them to nothing, and she remembered Ashenwing's roar, shaking the ship as he breathed fire that burned in airless space. Lisa answered that she trusted. Meridian hated the Krill as much as humans did, and right now, that was enough. 20 warships left Earth 3 days later, pretending to be a supply convoy, until they reached the edge of known space, where stars grew thin and darkness stretched between them, like an endless ocean. Meridian guided them through regions that human navigators said were impossible, including quantum storms that ripped at reality itself and nebulae that existed in multiple dimensions at the same time. Showed them ancient jump gates built by civilizations that died before humans learned to make fire, and the fleet moved through these forgotten paths like ghosts, in the dark. Ashenwing flew alongside the ships as a shimmering shadow against the stars, and somehow he moved through the vacuum without engines or propulsion, just his wings, catching energy currents that human sensors could not detect. Around the dragon, a field of protective magic covered the fleet and hid them from Krill patrols that passed within scanning range. Commander Amy Foster watched from the observation deck and asked Meridian how the dragon could survive in space without air or protection. Meridian explained that Ashenwing was not bound by normal physics because he was a creature of primordial force born from the first fires in the void, and space was as natural to him as air was to humans. And the 5th day, they met their first Krill patrol when hunter ships came out from behind a gas giant with their organic sensors sweeping the area looking for Protha. Human crews held their breath with weapons ready, but staying silent while the Krill ships passed within 1,000 kilometers and swept their sensors over the fleet again and again. But enemies saw nothing because Ashenwing's magic held strong and made the warships invisible. Like spirits haunting the darkness, when the Krill finally left, the humans cheered across every ship, but Meridian did not celebrate because she knew the easy part was finished. In the 10th day, they reached the Omega Cluster, and it looked like hell itself, with millions of Krill ships swarming through space like angry insects and massive living stations orbiting dying stars where new warriors were born by the billions. At the center of everything sat the hive mind, and it was bigger than a moon, made from twisted flesh and metal fused together and pulsing with terrible intelligence. Organic tubes thick as buildings connected it to thousands of relay stations, and every Krill in the galaxy linked to that horrible thing with their thoughts flowing from its corrupted consciousness. Lisa stared at it through the view screen, gripping her chair until her hands hurt, and asked how they could even damage something so enormous. Meridian stepped forward with a grim expression and said they would not damage it, but kill it by striking at the central cortex where the original consciousness still lived, but they needed time. Amy said quietly that drawing away the defenders was a death sentence for the fleet. Meridian replied that it was not a death sentence, but a sacrifice, and the difference was that their deaths would mean something important. Lisa stood up and activated the channel to all ships, telling them that everyone knew what they signed up for when they left Earth, and today they would give the Krill something they never experienced before, which was fear. She ordered all ships to break formation and attack with weapons free, and make the enemy pay for every inch of space. The 20 warships dropped their cloaking and surged forward with railguns blazing, and immediately alarms screamed across the Krill network as thousands of ships turned toward the humans like a wave of chitin and rage. As the battle erupted, Meridian climbed onto Ashenwing's back, and the dragon spread his wings while reality bent around them like heat waves, and in a flash of light they vanished and reappeared kilometers closer to the hive mind. The final battle for the galaxy had begun. Ashenwing dove through the chaos of battle, shifting between dimensions to avoid the storm of weapons fire, and Meridian clung to his back with her hands blazing as she deflected plasma bolts that came too close behind them. The human fleet fought with desperate courage, and ships exploded in brilliant flares as they traded their lives for precious seconds. The hive mind loomed ahead, vast and terrible, and as they got closer, Meridian felt its consciousness pressing against her mind like a crushing, Wei-Te voice like grinding metal spoke in her thoughts, saying she was the last of the Starborn, and they had consumed her kind 10,000 years ago and feasted on her worlds, and she could not stop. What had already won, Meridian shouted back that she was Meridian Lightbringer, daughter of the First Dawn, and guardian of the Forgotten Gates, and the Hive had taken everything from her, but today she would take everything from Atoshanwing, roared, and reality trembled as his dragonfire erupted not as flame but as pure destruction that unmade matter itself, and the outer layers of the hive mind burned away, revealing pulsing organs. Underneath, millions of Krill warriors swarmed toward them, controlled by the hive's will, but Meridian raised her hands and lightning jumped from her fingers, chaining between the creatures and turning them to ashy. Was not holding back anymore, because this was the moment. She had been preserved for across 10,000 years. They broke through the outer shell, and inside the hive mind was a maze of living corridors and neural pathways, all glowing with sick Latoshanwing. Flew through the tunnels at impossible speed, guided by his ancient senses, toward the central cortex. Meanwhile, the human fleet was dying, and only 7 ships remained from the original 20, with hulls battered and burning. Lisa watched her display as another frigate vanished in a flash, when its core exploded, and she ordered all remaining ships to fall back and concentrate. Remy reported they lost the Defender, and the Krill were adapting to human weapons faster than expected. Lisa looked at the swarm of enemy contacts that seemed endless and knew they had bought maybe 10 minutes from Meridian, and prayed. It was enough. Deep inside the hive mind, Meridian and Ashenwing reached the central cortex, which was a chamber huge as a cathedral, filled with pulsing neural tissue that glowed with evil intelligence. Thousands of organic cables fed into it, carrying thoughts and experiences from billions of Krill across the galaxy. Consciousness turned its full attention on them, and the weight of its hatred felt like gravity crushing down the hive mind. Spoke through the walls, saying they were too late because it had already sent a signal, and Krill fleets were converging on Earth right now, and in hours, the human homeworld would be Ash. Meridian reached out with her senses, and horror filled her, because it was true, and thousands of Krill ships were already jumping toward Earth. She whispered no, and then shouted it louder as Ashenwing roared in defiance and unleashed everything he had with dragonfire, flooding the chamber. Neural mass began to burn, and across the galaxy, billions of Krill went silent as their connection wavered, but it was not enough, because the cortex regenerated as fast as Ashenwing could destroy it. Meridian closed her eyes, knowing she had one final weapon she hoped never to use, and she thought of Lisa and her crew fighting impossible odds. She thought of Earth, blue and beautiful, about to face annihilation and all the worlds the Krill had consumed. She made her choice and whispered to Ashenwing to remember her. Before the dragon could respond, Meridian released the seals on her own power that kept her immortal form stable for 10,000 years. She became pure light and pure energy, like a star-given form, and then she detonated with a blast that would be seen across half the galaxy. The explosion was visible across half the galaxy as the hive mind and all the Krill stations and warrior fleets around the Omega Cluster vanished in an expanding sphere that rewrote physics itself. Meridian's sacrifice created a wave of destruction that traveled faster than light, carried on quantum connections with every Krill linked to the hive across the galaxy. Krill ships simply stopped as their pilots collapsed with their connection to the central consciousness. Severed forever on 1,000 worlds, Krill armies fell where they stood, becoming empty shells without the hive's guidance. The fleets racing toward Earth emerged from hyperspace to find their weapons dead and their thoughts silenced, and they drifted through space like debris, with billions of warriors reduced to mindless husks aboard the Valiant. Lisa watched the shockwave expand on sensors as a wall of impossible energy that swept past harmlessly but left every Krill ship dark and dead. Amy whispered that Meridian did With tears streaming down her face, Lisa said nothing as she stared at the readings, showing where the hive mind had been. And where Meridian had been, and her chest ached with grief, she could not name. His shadow moved across the view screen as Ashen Wing appeared, massive and terrible, with scales scorched black and eyes dimmed with sorrow. He circled the Valiant once as a final salute, and then turned toward the void beyond known space. Lisa called out, asking where he was going, but she already knew. The answer: Shanwing was returning to the place where dragons slept, waiting for the galaxy to need them again, and without Meridian, there was nothing left for him. Here the dragon spread his wings one last time and vanished, folding through dimensions. Until he was gone, the remaining ships limped back to Earth, carrying news of victory and the price that had been paid. Galaxy had been saved, but humanity would never forget the elf woman who awakened from 10,000 years of sleep to sacrifice everything for a species she'd just met in the weeks after human teams found krill ships across hundreds of systems, all silent and drifting, and some worlds were freed overnight when their krill overlords simply collapsed. Earth's stations began broadcasting a message across all frequencies saying the war was over and the krill were defeated and humanity endured. But in quiet moments when celebrations died down, people looked to the stars and wondered about Meridian and her sacrifice in the ancient wars she fought before humanity existed. They wondered if Ashen Wing still flew between the stars somewhere, guarding secrets from a forgotten Ajand. They wondered if someday, when the galaxy needed heroes again, another would awaken from the dark places between worlds. Lisa stood in the observation deck one last time before the Valiant was decommissioned and pressed her hand against the viewport, staring at distant stars. She whispered thank you to the darkness, and somewhere in the infinite void, a dragon's roar echoed through dimensions with a sound of grief and pride and promise. The galaxy fell silent as humans walked out into the stars, no longer hunted but free, and in that silence they carried the memory of an elf woman who gave everything so they might survive. Her name would be remembered, and her sacrifice would be honored. The stars would never forget.